All right. Thank you, everyone who showed up tonight, and we'll continue letting people in as they join us. We're really happy to have Pat Bergermeyer with us, who is a special needs financial planner. He is dedicated to helping families and individuals plan for and protect their and their family's financial goals, specializing in planning for families who have a loved one with a disability. And we're really excited to have Pat again. He joined us last year, and we're so happy that he was able to join us again this year.
All right, and thank you, ladies. Thank you, HMS. Thank you for inviting me in, and most importantly, thank you guys for taking time out of your nights to hear me talk about what I feel is an extremely important topic, but also very emotional, confusing, frustrating, scary one at the same time. And I'm going to try to get you with enough information from a high level on really share some of the mistakes I usually see out there, some strategies to avoid those mistakes, and hopefully, if anything, motivates you after this meeting to say, all right, I need to do something. So I realize that school's not always going to be there for me. The government's not probably going to be there the way I would want somebody to be there for my son or daughter. And take this active role in your planning to know that, you know, there's no better advocate than you as a mom or dad or caregiver, but to do it now. You know, we make a lot of excuses as parents on doing stuff that's important, like our estate planning and our wills and guardians stuff. But these are hard. But I will promise you it is a lot easier now than trying to reactively do these things down the line. So really quick background on me. I've been doing this for financial planning for 17 years. We started my 18th year this summer, which is crazy. And the past 13 years almost, my team's our focus has been financial planning, wealth management for families that have loved ones with a disability, all ranges of disabilities, all ages. And the focus of it is to make sure that the planning decisions you make not only take your needs into consideration, but how you have to look at things differently when you have somebody that's depending on you potentially for the rest of his or her life. I mean, it throws everything a curveball. You have to look at your legal planning, taxes are different, financial planning is vastly different, how we invest, where we invest, how we approach our insurance planning decisions. So everything's a little bit different. And, you know, a couple of the themes of this is surrounding yourself with the right team of people that you're going to work with. So for those of you that just tuned in, adding to the chat again, there is a link for an evaluation form, some additional information. And in the presentation I'll give, there'll be also a QR code where you can go to our special needs planning Facebook page where more information's there. Things like this that we're doing regularly, helpful articles and whatnot, I post on that site. So the PowerPoint that I'm going to go to, I'm also going to skim through it just for the sake of time, because I'm sure you guys are Zoom meeting out by 7 o'clock at night, but I want to try to keep it interactive. So please add your questions in chat. We'll try to hit on them as before I transition to the next slide or next topic. And again, get you the information that you guys want to know about. So I see most of you are pre-transition age, so nobody yet with a loved one over the age of 21 years old. So still in the thick of figuring out life when school is over, and what do you do when the bus stops coming at 22 or 23, however many extra years COVID gave our kids to stay in school. But the one thing I'm sure you found in your travels, there's no how-to for this. There's no manual. There's nothing you could find on Forbes articles or Barron's or any financial websites, because your planning is very different and unique, just like your child's unique. So I think it's good. You don't want to be thrown into some cookie cutter. This is how everybody your age has to do their planning because that's what people do. No, I mean, you have a child with a disability. Everything has to be done differently. And for all of you that are still dealing with your IEPs, I would highly doubt any of you have ever settled for an IEP to just be okay and you settle for it. No, you want the best. You want the most efficient, the most optimal plan when it comes to the education. Same thing, probably medical, therapeutic, you want the best. Let's not settle for our financial and estate planning to be just okay or acceptable. You want the best and the most efficient financial, legal, tax plan possible, and that's what we try to do here. So these are the things, and I could probably ask every single one of my clients, they're going to all say the same variations of these things, but the key to this is you guys are parents. You know your loved one better than anybody else. You know nobody can really fill your shoes the way you guys caregive for your loved one, but the proper planning will answer one of the hardest questions you have to answer as a parent is, if I died yesterday, what's tomorrow look like for my loved one? This planning helps you get that answer and be comfortable and confident in that answer. But it's to make sure that not only do we get government benefits, they're great, they're very important, but we want to make sure that the quality of life we want for our child, that we envision that we're doing now, we don't want that to stop just because we're no longer here. So that's what we're trying to focus on here, and have as much peace of mind as possible that there's that plan to say what happens that next day, that next week, and every month of every year of the rest of my child's life, that there's a plan in place that not only deals with money and protecting benefits, but the fact that it's still a brother, a sister, a son, daughter here that we're doing this for, and we want them to have the same lifestyle that we were giving them. So we do want to talk about benefits. I'm not going to talk a lot because you could have a whole night dedicated to government benefits. And if you're going to sit through a government benefits presentation, I would encourage you to have an adult beverage handy, because that's usually what goes along with that kind of planning. Retirement wise, you guys, if you have 2 parents and a child with a disability, you are planning what I've called a 3-person retirement. It's your own quality of life as a parent. I mean, we don't want to forget about that. That's as important as your child's quality of life, which to me means to be able to transition to work because you want to, not because you have to, as soon as possible. Have the most income from all sources in retirement, investments and Social Security, pensions, if you're lucky enough to have them, whatnot, and have a high probability of not running out of money and live till you're 110. And if I could have everybody sign a contract that says they're going to live that long, I think it would take a lot of the worry off your plates. But we don't know how long we're going to be here. But either way, it's focus on your quality of life, because if you can maximize your quality of life while you're alive, you'll be able to do the most for your child while you're here. But then we need to say, okay, how do we navigate our lifetime and our income, but also potentially a whole other lifetime behind us, and do both without driving ourselves nuts about worrying about we're spending too much money that would have otherwise gone to a special needs trust. There are ways that you can do it, and do it with creating the least amount of sleepless nights possible. Put this down of another hard question to answer. I've got more than one child. How do I provide for everybody? I mean, do I provide for everybody? What does equal even mean? And I've learned fair isn't equal, equal isn't fair. But if we can, we try to provide as equitably as possible for all heirs, because I would imagine those other heirs are going to probably have some pretty defined roles in your other child's life. And then Uncle Sam, no real tax breaks when you have a child with a disability. He or she's going to get taxed. Thank you. I forgot to do my presenter view. Thank you. That's always the thing I forget in the beginning of these. But the taxes are just as bad, and it's sometimes worse when we are going to leave money behind. And that's what we are going to do. I mean, we are going to leave stuff behind to take care of our children when we're gone. We want to make sure it goes as tax efficiently as possible. So where are these mistakes usually made? So the biggest mistake, I think, these first 2 go hand in hand, if we could go, is we don't have the right team, or our team doesn't talk to each other. So we have tax people we only talk to like now, right before April 15th. Attorneys that we try to talk to as little as possible because it costs money to talk to them. And our insurance people seem like they're always calling us to sell us something, and government benefits only when we're hitting ages like 18 or 21 or whatever it might be. But these people they don't cohesively work together, or they're not experts in the areas where you need them. And I've seen a lot of things in 12 years focused on this special needs planning. And I know a lot of what I didn't know when I just started in this. And it was like a smack in the face of like, oh my goodness, the amount of mistakes we can make as advisors, not even knowing the right questions to ask. And legally, any attorney can do the legal planning that you need to do from a special needs planning standpoint, but that doesn't mean that they should be. You don't want to be somebody's guinea pig. You don't want to be use an attorney that's going to dabble in special needs planning. You want somebody doing it all the time, every day, and it's the focal point of their practice. Or we just don't want to think about it, and we procrastinate, or we spend more time planning vacations. You know how it is. Throw a pandemic on top of it. There's always a reason why this stuff, even though we know it's important, gets pushed to the back burner. So you want to, that's why it's called planning, not plan, put it in a drawer, and never look at it ever again. It needs to be updated, tweaked, and as people in our lives change and tax laws change. But if you can get one of the confusing things that I see regularly is what actually goes into a special needs plan, and where does the financial people come into play? Where does the attorney come into play? What about all these government benefits? So in my opinion, they're all equally important. My 3D interpretation of paper there and my chicken scratch, but this is how I write this out in every initial, and I try to explain what you have to do and what roles they are. But a lot of people will gravitate first to the work the attorneys do, and I'm not an attorney, so I can't do what the attorneys do, but they definitely can't do what I do from a securities and financial planning standpoint. But what the attorney is going to do is create legal documentation. Very, very important legal documentation that has to be drafted correctly. And they want to be aware of all recent changes in the way these documents are drafted. But what they will do is they will create your basic documents. And when I say basic, this is what everybody needs, which is a will, which simply says who gets what, when do they get it, how do they receive it, and for our minor children, who raises them. As parents, I don't think there's anything more we owe to our children than who would take care of them and raise them if we're not here. So your will is the only way to have a say in that. And then your powers of attorney, you need somebody to be able to make decisions on your behalf if you're incapacitated, both to talk to your financial institutions. I can't watch it. Figured that was going to happen eventually. But your power of attorney for medical decision is very important too, because if any of you have had to deal with a loved one at the end of their life, and if you weren't able to talk on their behalf or talk about DNR and what kind of life sustaining means, I mean, that's a lot to put on somebody's plate. That you don't know, and it's an emotional situation. You care about them, you love them, you want this stuff done before you pass away. So that's what everybody needs, not just wealthy people or people with children with a disability. Everybody needs those 3 basic documents, but the most important one to you guys is this thing called a special needs trust. This special needs trust document, the most important thing that it does, if you look at this barrier that goes around the $sign, it's a protective barrier, and it says none of the money the trust eventually owns will jeopardize your child's government benefit eligibility. It's the only way to leave meaningful amounts of wealth behind that are there to pay for all these quality of life, lifetime care things. It's a must for anybody that has a child with a disability. And doing it is very important, but there's this misconception that special needs planning begins and ends with this special needs trust. It's that special that we don't need to do anything else. Well, for those of you that have a trust from an attorney, you realize that trust was written on paper, right? It's a document. It's not a marginable security. It's not a stock that can be sold or a checking account where we can write checks from. It's just a legal document. So without enough money, assets, stuff, whatever you want to call it, going into it, it'll never do what the real intention to do, besides just protecting government benefits, but it's to pay for all these things that cost money, the quality of life things, the medical care things, the care management. One of the most overlooked things in a special needs plan is we focus our attention on the quality of life of this individual that usually may not even have a voice at the table when decisions are made for him or her. What about the other people that are going to be impacted? We put a lot on our neurotypical siblings' plates without ever talking to them or thinking about what that might do to where their life could take them logistically or whatnot. And where care management is huge is that the siblings, look, their jobs might take them to the West Coast, or their partner's jobs might take them to the West Coast. And I can tell you, when your kids have kids of their own, they're going to take precedence over their siblings. It's just kind of how it is. So care management is something that the trustee can pay for, to have somebody check in on the individual as often as you want, and report back to the siblings if they're in Arizona or down in Florida, to say, hey, look, your sibling is good, but they need the new TV. They want to do this. They want to go on vacation. So then that care manager can also take them out to dinner, can take them out to a show, to a ball game, do all of these things if the other family members aren't able to do it as often as you like, or just aren't close by. But that's what life's about. It's about continuing as much as possible the same lifestyle for these individuals. And I mean, look, I fortunately have not had both caregiving spouses pass away and see the reality of it. I've talked to people, I've read about it, but life is not exactly the same. Your child's probably not going to travel the same amount if it's not with you. But there is still a lot that can and should be done for them, rather than just saying, okay, they get Social Security and they're living somewhere independently or in a group home, but nobody's checking in on to say, what else could they want or need? Maybe new clothing or a new TV, or to take them out into the community above and beyond wherever the group home might take them. So, so again, they cost money. So that's, some people would just say, oh, I got SSI and I got Medicaid. I'm okay. They have that. It's, well, $841 a month is SSI. How far does that really go? Oh, well, they'll get Social Security when I retire. Okay, maybe they'll get $1,300 a month then. How far does that really go? And then you have the families that have children that are higher functioning. Well, they're going to work. I'm like, all right, I've got a couple hundred clients with adults with special needs that aren't making $100,000 a year, that went to college and graduated and got degrees, and it's, they're there working 2 part-time jobs, and they don't want to drive, so you have to drive them, but they're making $30,000 a year. I don't think that would be the quality of life you want for them. So there's still a need, regardless of where the functioning level is. It's just, if we can get government benefits, awesome. But what if they're not disabled enough to get them? Well, that doesn't mean we don't need this plan. So for those of you where that, there's a plan that has to exist and government benefits are going to be there, which would be the majority, I would imagine, of you guys from HMS. But there's other families out there you probably know that have a high functioning child with autism. They don't need this, or mental illness that manifests itself later on in life in the 20s and 30s. These are things that still present a lot of planning needs, but government benefits might not be part of the picture. So the financial planning is what allows all of this to exist. Without enough money, you're probably never going to be able to retire, right? And without enough money in retirement, you're not going to be able to support your child's quality of life. So it all boils down to using your money the right way for yourself and for your child. And the two main goals we have in the financial planning we do in this community, and the promises that we make, is that the first priority at all times has to be you. Because if you're making your financial decisions, and that's not just how to invest your money, but how to deal with your mortgage and refinancing and paying off debt, paying for college, you want to make all these decisions with the measuring stick. Will this give me more income in retirement? Because like I said, if you can retire as soon as possible and have the largest amount of income that is sustainable for the rest of your life, you give yourself the most flexibility to help your child. The second priority, though, is if you're going to create a trust, you need to fund it, and we need to fund the trust. And well, the more money you spend, the less money that's there when you die, and those goals are going to go like this the rest of your life. So how do we do it as efficiently as possible? That's where the financial planning comes into play. So on the benefit side, one thing important to know is there are 2 types with a very vast difference. One, families are entitled to receive benefits. Others, they are eligible to receive. So knowing where that is important, and age 18 is the most important age for eligibility-based benefits. Your child can become eligible for SSI. They need to have less than $2,000 in resources, and they need to be disabled. SSI is the gateway to continued Medicaid eligibility. So SSI and Medicaid. And then the other one is Social Security, which is the gateway to Medicare. Social Security, if you guys don't know this, your children will be entitled to collect off your Social Security records. 50% of your benefit when you retire or start your Social Security retirement benefit. That's huge. So taking Social Security at 62, just without thinking of the impact of it, may not make sense. You look at both you and your spouse's benefits, and maybe we can get the most while still benefiting our child the most. So Social Security planning decisions are different because of that. The other important reason why 18's there is you need to make a decision between guardianship and power of attorney. 21, usually when the bus stops coming and transition has to occur. Age 22, probably not applicable to you guys, but again, for other families that are dilly-dallying or procrastinating, or they're not coming to the realization that their child might not be making 6 figures at some point, if they don't apply and get their child in the Social Security system as a disabled adult before their 22nd birthday, the child loses the ability to collect off the parent's work record. That could be hundreds of thousands of dollars left on the table. And then at 26, usually when somebody will drop off of healthcare. So on the estate planning front, so as I mentioned, not an attorney, but I have a network of attorneys I work with, vetted, work with regularly, know they're experts in this. You definitely, absolutely have to work with somebody that is. The first indication that they are an expert is if they have their main website has special needs stuff all over it. You know, special needs planning, guardianship, elder law might be on there. You want to see special needs as the predominant focus of their practice. You don't want to see defense and DUI and real estate and business litigation and estate planning in there. Maybe special needs is one bullet point. You want it to be everywhere. You want to also see them out there in the special needs community, you know, involved. That's the type of attorney you want to work with. And you need to make sure that the attorney has open communication with your advisors to make sure that when you do your trust and provisions in your will for your other kids, that you do your beneficiaries. I see that very often, that you'll do a great legal plan, but there's never any follow through to get your beneficiaries updated. So, but again, summarizing the legal planning, you can't just stop special needs planning because you have a trust. A not adequately funded special needs trust will not do what you want it to do, which is provide quality of life. So, so now onto the financial planning, and that's time is it now 7:26 at night. We get to talk taxes, so exciting. But taxes are important because we work very hard to build our wealth. I assume you all agree. The market has been very, very favorable to us the past 12 years. But as they say in the investing world, trees do not grow to the sky. So do not fall into this false sense of security that you're just going to earn 20% per year and this will be easy. No, I still remember 2009 when the market lost 50% over 18 months and took away a decade's worth of earnings. It was scary. 4-year-old's trying to turn on the TV now. But it's keeping wealth. It's not just building it, it's keeping it. So what if we're building our wealth in a bucket that's going to get taxed harshly when we die? Does that make sense? It doesn't, but I see too many investment only advisors focused on growing investments, but they don't talk about the back end. Hey, you're going to fund a special needs trust with this wealth at some point. What is the tax going to be? What's the tax going to be when it's inside the trust? So we need to understand that and understand what assets work efficiently, which I'll talk about in a second. Talked about the 3-person retirement. I saw, Sheila, you've got a 9-year-old daughter. You should think of your investing like you were 9 years old again, because based on her projected mortality, life expectancy, that's how much time you have. So we don't really want to think, hey, we're in our 30s, we're in our 50s, we're in our 60s. We got to invest like we're 30, 50, or 60. No, we want to invest based on the lifetime that our money might be needed for the rest of our child's life too. So I see that again, boilerplate investing. People just invest how everybody their age is told they should invest, and it doesn't work that way. The insurance planning, again, protecting your wealth. I mean, if you build wealth, and I mean, I'm sure some of you have maybe lived through this yourselves, and then you have to spend money on a nursing home, God forbid, a memory unit at a nursing home, or have somebody coming to somebody's house to provide care for them. You know, all these great returns that we've seen get wiped out by giving our money to a nursing or a medical provider. It just doesn't make sense. So we have to deal with that risk and address it one of a couple ways that are pretty unique to special needs situations. And like I mentioned, the beneficiary designation. So a lot of mistakes. The biggest culprits are, and don't take offense to this, that if you're one of them, the people that try to do it themselves. Investments are a portfolio is not a plan. A portfolio is a means to accomplish goals in a well-written, comprehensive plan. But stocks, bonds, mutual funds, it's not a plan. And look, you didn't do anything special the past 12 years, just like I didn't do anything special the past 12 years for clients because the market just went up. You could have thrown a dart at a major stock market index and done fine accumulating wealth over the past 12 years, as long as you didn't panic out during COVID. But you were probably distracted like everybody else. We all thought we were going to die and need to get toilet paper and paper towels. And we missed the 30% drop in 33 days. 2009, if you didn't panic when you were down 50%, you never lost any money. And if you stayed in the stock market, you've been handsomely rewarded. But that is probably not going to continue that way. And navigating 40 years of income and an unknown mortality and tax law changes and market volatility and your child situation, I think is very difficult to try to do that on your own. So you need experts, you need tax advisors that are going to help you in retirement. Maybe not so much now, unless you own a business. Do you really need a tax advisor doing your tax returns every year? If you got a couple, W-2s, it's pretty straightforward because most people aren't itemizing these days. But tax advisors, investment, financial advisors, very important in retirement. So we have in terms of figuring out how much your child needs, some of you might have started this. it becomes very intimidating. Like, oh my goodness, if I died yesterday, to have the same lifestyle for him or her, that's a lot of money. I don't just have sitting in a bank account somewhere, nor do I have another magical pot of money to go along with my retirement money or my other kids' education funds to take care of my child with a disability. And I would imagine most of you have some sort of life insurance. Great, you've taken a step in the right process to help to protect your children. But it's figuring that out, like how much would they need? Really, what would they need based on what I want? And you start plugging in some of these calculations with the expenses that you would envision. You can get an idea of what would they need today if you died yesterday. What would they need if you died in retirement? What would you need? What would they need if you died when you're 95? So then we can start making sure we're saving in the right places. So we have a proprietary calculator that we use. You can fund a trust with everything on here. You all have a different mix of it. It doesn't matter. We can put real estate investments. Life insurance works great because it's completely tax-free. But I will tell you, for the sake of time, the absolute worst account we can leave behind to our kids is a pre-tax retirement account. These are your 401ks, your 403bs, your thrift savings plans, your cash balance pensions, your pension lump sums, traditional IRAs. These are all dollars that have never been income taxed. And we're deferring this income tax, just kicking a tax can down the road under the guise that we're saving money. Well, we're not saving taxes. We're just deferring it. And I wish I could see everybody's hand, but I would love to see how many of you think taxes are going to be lower in the future. Probably not. And I would, successful people also don't want to be in lower tax brackets. Successful people stay successful in retirement. So I think you should think of that differently, because if we know if you're Pennsylvania residents, 4.5% of everything you own is going to go to the state of Pennsylvania when you die, and then possibly another 37% of all your retirement money. I mean, that's a lot that could go to the government, but we can easily avoid it by trying to get ahead of Uncle Sam now by things like Roth accounts, Roth 401ks. There's no income limit. You can contribute to a Roth 401k, taxable investments where we're navigating long-term capital gains taxes, cash value life insurance, maybe it's investment real estate. There's a lot of other investments that could be unique to you, knowing that, hey, we're multi-generational. We're definitely leaving something behind. We don't want to be leaving it behind in the wrong type of account or investment. So we talked about everything up here. This is something that causes a lot of questions. Most of the presentations people ask about ABLE accounts. So the way I can talk about ABLE accounts is in a comparison to, hey, we want to save money for our child's needs now or in the future. So you guys as parents, if your child needed for something today, who pays for it? You do, right? And they're going to be relying on you to some extent, even when you're retired. Who's going to pay for things for them? At that point, you will. So you're the living, breathing special needs trust. You just happen to go by mom or dad. So in reality, you, from your own assets, do not need to be putting any money aside for them in their special needs trust while you're alive, and even arguably an ABLE account while you're alive, because there's nothing that ABLE account nor the special needs trust they can do that you can't do, keeping money in your own name. So if we understand that and agree to that, hey, mom and dad, you don't need to be putting money away in separate accounts specifically earmarked for your child with special needs. Keep it in your own name. Invest in your own accounts, your 401k, your Roths. This is all money that could be used for your child later on or now. So this really comes into play. When is money needed? It's when the last caregiver dies. So I want to be putting money away for when the money's needed. So to me means, okay, when you're gone. So where's the best place to be putting it? So in a special needs trust for them, the special needs trust can be used for pretty much anything to enrich your child's quality of life. It could be used for a vacation. It could be used for a companion and them to go on vacation. It could be used for anything that you really want it to be used for, as long as it's used for the benefit of the beneficiary. So an ABLE account can only be used for certain expenses called disability related expenses. So going on vacation, going to the mall, going to a ball game, having fun, video games, I don't think they're disability related expenses. So an ABLE account has significant restrictions on what you can use it for. Investment wise, you can only pick from a couple of mutual funds. Why? And as an investment guy, I don't want to be relegated to mutual funds. I want individual stocks. I want exchange traded funds. So an ABLE account is not a replacement for proper planning. So do not rush to go fund one of these things unless you need to. So for my Pennsylvania residents on the call, Pennsylvania is unique. We get a tax deduction though for contributions we make to an ABLE account. So if you're going to be spending money on your child anyway, for things that are disability related, home modifications, a handicap accessible van, vitamins, nutrition, whatever it might be, you might as well fund an ABLE account because you're going to spend it anyway. Put the $16,000 into the ABLE account if you're going to spend it, get the tax deduction, pull the money back out. But I think it needs to be part of a bigger conversation where an ABLE account may or may not make sense. So at this point, you guys are probably, your heads might be spinning from information. Try to figure out, well, where the heck do I begin with this type of planning? I'm kind of biased on my answer because here's reality. And I try to talk that way because that's how I like my other professionals that I work with, do things with, to tell me we're all going to die someday. Hopefully it's many, 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 many years down the road. And, you know, when we have people that depend on us, we need to make sure that they're given the opportunities that we want for them and that financial burden's not does not fall in somebody else's lap. So your two scenarios. Let's say you don't do your legal planning, but you get your financial house in order and you have investments, or if you don't have enough already for your kids, you bought life insurance and you died. There's at least enough money there. We can reactively do legal planning after you're gone. I mean, it's got some negative catches to it, but we can still do the planning. But if you do the legal planning, but don't have your financial house in order and you die, I can't magically create more wealth for your family. So I think you really need to get your finances in order. And I think, and look, if it's me or somebody like me, you want to have these hard conversations already. Like, who do you want as the guardian for your child? What about the backup guardians? Who do you want to have them overseeing their money as trustee, co-trustees? Your other kids, how do we divvy things up? What ages do we leave money to our other children? Do we leave it outright or in trust to them? These are all things the attorney's going to ask you. So I think if you can get organized, having a balance sheet where everything is, what it's worth, and how it's titled, it will make that process with the attorney a million times easier. But either way, they need to talk with each other at the end. How we work, just to give you an idea, our initial meetings are always complimentary, majority via Zoom these days. It's a whole lot more efficient, but it gives us time to get to know each other, see what you're looking for, what you've done, see if there's anything we could do to help, and we decide together, does it make sense to go to a second meeting? But even if it's not us that you absolutely need right now, maybe it is somebody else in the special needs community, an attorney, a tax advisor, or whatnot, is maybe connected to somebody else. But either way, second opinion, give you the peace of mind that what you've done is done right, done as uniquely as you need it to be because of your special needs situation, or at least share with you one or two things of value that we can help with. So, you know, in summary, make sure your team's working with your child as the center of the planning, but you guys are there that knows your loved one better than anybody else. Make sure everybody else knows that you have a plan for how the money is going to be used, that you've written down. Stop touching the mouse. What did you do? So what happens when mommy and the 8-year-old go out at night and daddy's with the 4-year-old during a presentation? So the memorandum of intent, there's this document you guys can write. Spells out, this is a day in the life of my child. This is what I want for him or her. This is what I don't want. Doctors, medications, therapies, religion, holidays, travel, anything and everything that can help give the trustee and anybody else an idea of what you wanted for them. Living situations. What are you good? What are you okay with? What do you definitely not want them living in? And that'll help them get an idea on how to spend that money for the best way possible. But the evaluation form, again, this is kind of a snapshot of it and some of the key things in there. If you take a look at that QR code, that'll take you to our Facebook page. It's probably easier to find it that way. So with that evaluation form, if you take some time to complete it, it'll come to me if you want to continue this conversation one-on-one and, you know, look at what you've done or figure out where you want to get started and what to be doing to get things done the correct way. I mean, we're always here as a resource if you're not ready for it now, eventually, but I would say you want to get it started sooner than later. If for whatever reason we might not be the best fit, there's a couple other of me in the Philadelphia area. There's only like 3 of us in the Philadelphia area that focus their financial planning practice on special needs. I tell everybody, for whatever reason, personalities or whatnot, if it's not a fit, I'd much rather you have to do it with somebody that knows what they're doing. Other financial advisors, like I said, Vanguard's probably the worst place to be if you have a child with special needs. They don't get it. Average financial advisors, just like I was 12 years ago, they don't know because they don't do it often enough. And, we all think it's fine because the market's gone up, but that does not mean that you're setting yourself up, and more importantly, your kid up for the most successful situation possible. So with that said, those are my disclosures. That none of that was tax nor legal advice. I'm going to stay on as long as you guys have some questions, if you want to talk about things, if you want some additional information. But if anybody does need to jump off for the sake of time, I hope everybody at least picked up one new thing, something that you can turn around and implement in your own planning, things that you can share with other families that that might not have been able to tune in here. Please let other people know. I mean, these resources are out there. I mean, with Zoom, the world's a lot flatter. It's a lot easier to do this stuff now, rather than trying to figure out, oh, I got to get to a workshop at night and who's going to watch the kids, or I have to go into an office for a meeting with my financial planner. It's a lot easier via Zoom, and we can get this important planning done. So thank you for listening. Thank you for having me come in, and I will stop talking and open the floor now to you guys who might have some questions. And sorry for the distraction during that. Go ahead, Laura, you had a question?
Yes. First of all, thank you very, very much, Pat. I always do learn something new. I was curious about special needs trusts. Is there a minimum amount that a family would need to have to begin a special needs trust? I always think of ABLE accounts as any amount and special needs trusts as a certain amount, but I don't actually know if that's accurate at all.
So it's an awesome question, and it depends on, first, how much money, and second, what's it going to be used for. So if it's money that isn't going to be used now, that we don't need to use for many years down the road for this child, then you need to think, does it make sense to fund either of those? Or should the money that we were thinking of putting into a trust or ABLE account just stay in mom and dad's name? But there is no minimum to set up a special needs trust, because remember, setting up a special needs trust document with the attorney, you're just paying the attorney for the legal work, and then you get this legal document called the Little Johnny Third Party Special Needs Trust. And you might get a tax ID number from the IRS for it. So you've got it, great. Well, you could go to your bank, go open a checking account in the name of the special needs trust, and now you have a receptacle for money that can go into the checking account. But when it comes to funding, actually moving money into a special needs trust, it depends also on who's the trustee. Like if it's a family member or the parents, I mean, you could put $100 into a special needs trust, $2,000 into a special needs trust. It's just going to sit in that checking account. It's not going to generate any tax returns or anything like that. But again, what's the difference between mom and dad having $10,000 in their own checking account versus the special needs trust checking account? Nothing, really. It's actually better in mom and dad's name. But the ABLE account, again, I only tell people to fund it in two circumstances. Well, three. One, you're spending money and it's over $5,000–6,000 a year. You might as well use that ABLE account similar to, like, some of you might have a health savings account or a flex spending account where you get a tax deduction for putting money in for medical expenses. It's kind of the same thing, but only state income tax deductible. So like I said, if you're spending over $5,000 a year on any kind of disability expenses, you might as well fund that ABLE account first, save yourself 3% in state income taxes, and then take the money right back out. You don't need to use the ABLE account as a long-term investment. The other scenario is you've got a child on SSI, Medicaid, they accidentally come into wealth. We need to get the money out of their name, and that money, that dollar amount they have is less than $16,000, which is the annual ABLE account contribution limit. We can very quickly open an ABLE account at paable.gov, move the $16,000 in, or technically $14,000 into the ABLE account, and their benefits continue uninterrupted. So it gives us like a really quick fix to get money out of these kids' names who accidentally come into wealth. And then the third way you would fund an ABLE account is if somebody's willing to give you money and they say, we're not giving it to you unless we're putting it into an ABLE account, then you will graciously open up an ABLE account and let that person give you the money to the ABLE account. But other than that, I just don't see it. I meet with people that are like, oh, well, yeah, we're putting $100 a month in the ABLE account. I'm like, why? Well, for Johnny. And I'm like, he doesn't need any money in his ABLE account. He's got you guys. You're his ABLE account. your special needs trust. Keep the money in your own Roth, or fund your Roth IRA, or pay for your life insurance with the money, or put more money into your 401k. That's all going to benefit Johnny. Don't put it into his ABLE account. It doesn't make any sense. So does that kind of answer that question, Laura?
It really does. Thank you very much, Pat.
Go ahead, Lori, and great to see you as always.
You too. First, I just want to give a personal testimony that if you're not sure who to use, please meet with Pat and his team, because it has been a real lifesaver for us. He really has a gift for explaining a lot of the world of special needs in terminology and scenarios that really help you understand it. And he understands our world and can help you make great decisions for your family, for your child, for your neurotypical children as well. So I highly recommend that you give him a call. And also, if you need a lawyer, he led us to a woman named Randy Steen, who has her own child with special needs, and she was a godsend as well. And we today got our big package of everything signed, and we're now feeling like we're finally caught up. So it's a quick testimonial. One other thing is that Pat just mentioned something that we had never thought of before. So whether you use Pat or someone else, life insurance was never something that I really thought of as a vehicle that we could draw from, but also use as something that that Jacob would be able to use in his trust, as well as our, again, quote unquote, typical children, because is there really anybody typical in the world? But if you do meet with Pat or someone else, consider life insurance. I really can't explain it to you, but Pat explained it to us, and it was really an awesome idea. So again, I don't know why, but it really worked.
Yeah,
So
Lori, thank you.
The financial advisor, please ask them about that.
And that's a good point on the insurance. I say the two worst places to get your life insurance is online and through your employer. If you're healthy, your stuff you're going to pay for through work, it's overpriced because they lump you into a group of unhealthy people. So you got to pay a higher premium for that. And life insurance, unfortunately, it's not a commodity. It's not buy the cheapest. That's what you should do, or get it from your auto and homeowners insurance salesman, because they don't understand financial planning. And look, I hate paying for my insurance. I do. I mean, the $20,000 a year I spend on my all insurances, I would find a lot more fun things to spend that money on a yearly basis. But I know what it does. I know what it protects. I know what it does for my daughters many years down the road. And I think if we all didn't have to pay for it, we would just get as much as we possibly could. That's the problem. But it's understanding where there's a line where insurance stops becoming an expense and it becomes an investment. It becomes a way to use governmental dollars when your kids turn 18 effectively, a way of enhancing your retirement, your asset allocation. There's sophisticated ways that look at it. And I think you should do it with a person that understands that. So, but thank you for bringing it up. Sabrina, you had a question. Up, still on mute, sorry. Do I know how to unmute you? Let me see.
Sorry, Estelle, you're muted.
I don't know how to. I was seeing if I could unmute her, but I couldn't figure
There
out.
you go.
There we go.
There, it wasn't allowing me. Hi, Pat. I just wanted to kind of go with what Lori said. We are working with Pat now, just started the process with him, partly because of Lori's recommendation. And I have heard you speak many times before. So he does have a wealth of knowledge, but we are one of those people, and Pat can probably attest to this. Things always get in the way. So we should meet, we don't, then we don't talk. So it gets in the way. But what he was saying, he has a wealth of knowledge. One thing we did that we should have done and talked to him before we did it, we had an opportunity to buy a wheelchair accessible van. It was something that came up. We weren't necessarily looking for it, but we had to move quickly. So we went ahead and bought it. We talked to Pat after that, and he said, you should have put the money in an ABLE account. You could have gotten the tax deduction. We had already done it. It was too late. Had we been working with Pat beforehand, it would have been something that we could have done. So I just wanted to kind of again, as I said, mimic what Lori said. I think he has a wealth of knowledge for us with these special needs kids. So I'm
Thank you,
looking forward to
Estelle.
working with Pat.
Yeah, and good to see you too. I think I saw somebody else with their hand raised. Anybody
Yes.
else have? Go ahead. Whoever that is.
Hi. We had created our special needs trust just so many years ago. And the people that we identified for guardians and trustees, some we're not even friends with anymore.
Yeah.
And we need to update those. Is there a minimum age requirement for, I guess we have to, again, do some updating, but I'm curious about rethinking about guardians and trustees. Are there minimum age requirements?
Like for somebody to be a guardian of a minor?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 18. Same thing with
Okay.
trustee.
Okay.
But I mean, realistically, that's a lot of responsibility to put on an 18-year-old, the guardianship especially. But I mean, my wife and I, the hardest decision we had to make when doing our wills was who was going to be the guardian of our kids. And I'm sure you guys can attest to this. It's a lot easier to cross people off your list who you definitely don't want to be guardians of your kids than it is to find a list of acceptable people. And it's hard because, like you found, I mean, relationships can change, their family, the way they raise their own kids could change. So it's a hard thing to think about. I mean, if you're thinking of like an 18-year-old sibling to be putting on there and you have nobody else better, then do it, because hopefully you're not going anywhere anytime soon and that's not actually going to be used.
Yeah.
And you said your documents are 12 years old, so that's not uncommon either. But if you have documents older than 2020, you need to update them, because there was a major legislation passed in 2020 called the Secure Act, which would mean you have to update some of your provisions in your legal documents. So if you haven't heard from your attorneys, reach out to them and ask them why, first and foremost, and then look at their website and see if they're an expert in special needs planning, and see if maybe you need to use somebody else.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you need any names in the area too, can certainly give you names. I would have, just like Lori recommended, Randy Steen's one that I work with pretty regularly. And there's a few others in the area that are very good.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Go ahead, Julie.
Hi. Yeah. I just had a question, thinking as like an aunt who commonly contributes to 529 plans. Are special needs trusts the type of plans that would be useful, appropriate for families to share out with extended family members or friends as they would a 529 plan for other children? And if so, is there a way for these types of plans to be easily accessible by multiple contributors?
So the easy answer is yes. So an ABLE account for one individual can in aggregate receive $16,000 from all sources in any given year. So yeah, mom or dad can go to paable.gov, open an ABLE account in their kid's name and say, hey, if you want to make a gift or birthday present, communion, whatever it might be, to the ABLE account, they can certainly do that. I've never done it. I would imagine maybe there's a link or an account number that could be done with it. Or they could say, hey, look, this is what we're doing. Johnny can't have any money. So you can't give him a graduation gift. You can't give him checks. We're not going to deposit them anyway. You can give it payable to us. And we're doing this thing for Johnny, this ABLE account. Or we have a Johnny account where it's an investment account in the parents' names and it's not linked to his social security number, but they're managing it for his future needs. The government doesn't look at it as his money, but they know it's his. So I think if you have people gifting or willing to do it, I mean, special needs planning can be the most multi-generational planning. You got grandparents that aren't going to spend their money and they want to give, they can do some really neat things. And I think, again, bringing the family together via Zoom to say, all right, grandma, grandpa, you want to do what you can for Johnny. So let's do this. You could gift it's called $20,000 to his special needs trust every year. And hopefully the market cooperates and you live another 20 years, 400 grand might grow to 500 grand. That's definitely going to help Johnny. Don't get me wrong. But what if the $20,000 gift that you make every year could create $1 million for Johnny right now when it's needed? Like if we as mom and dad passed away, which is when the financial burden would fall on anybody else, what if you didn't have to worry about the stock market cooperating or interest rates or Ukraine and COVID? What if you just knew that that wealth was created for that next generation of your grandchildren? And they can do that. It's just, again, educating them that multiple generation planning with a dependent with special needs in the mix, there's unique things that not every advisor does or uses or even understands is out there on a regular basis. So I would say enable, if someone, like I said, if somebody's like, no, I'm going to give it to an ABLE account, then yeah, let them fund the ABLE account for them, but they can only have one ABLE account. So, but good question. I just say, talk to your financial advisor and see if it makes sense and how much for people to be putting into an ABLE account.
Thank you.
Estelle, do you still have a question, or is your hand? I don't know how to turn my hand thingy off. So I guess you're in the same boat I am. I'm gonna throw another idea out there for everybody, because I saw, well, for anybody that has a child that's 18 or soon to be turning 18 this year, SSI is a maximum of $841 a month. You just don't get $841. And no offense to anybody here who works for Social Security, you don't work with a bunch of retired brain surgeons on the Social Security office either. So for those of you that had the pleasure of navigating an SSI application or a denial or a approval for not the full amount, or somebody that is wasn't very nice to you at a Social Security office, this is what is happening, and it's even worse with COVID and the office is shutting down. But when you apply for SSI, your child is 18. SSI is to pay for food, shelter, utilities. That's it. So you have to charge them room and board to live with you. You have to tell the government that I'm not paying for any of their groceries anymore. They'll pay for their own meals when we go out to eat. You can't pay for any of their food. If you are deemed to be paying for any of the things SSI is supposed to pay for, guess what? Their SSI gets reduced by a third automatically right off the top, which gives them like $550 a month. And that is called in-kind support and maintenance, IKSM, if you want to look it up. But there is no reason that an individual that's not working, that's not getting child support, is getting a reduced amount of SSI. So we can appeal that determination. We can go back and say, wait a second. The room and board, we're charging them. Here's the room and board agreement. We're paying for their food, or we're not paying for their food. Here's receipts. And no, they're not paying for rent in my 5,000 square foot house, because the $600 a month I charge them in room and boarding isn't going to pay rent in a 6,000 square foot house. It's paying for the square footage of the room that they live in. So that, and I didn't make that up. A Social Security expert that's out of Chester County who speaks nationally, I learned that from him at one of his presentations. That's what you don't want to take no as an answer, or you don't want to take 2/3 of yes as an answer. You want to get the full amount of SSI. But the key is, all right, you get it. You've got SSI. You've navigated hurdle number 1 for the rest of your child's life. What do you do with it? Well, it's $841 guaranteed, tax-free, coming in every month. You can't let it sit there, because they still can't have over $2,000. Well, by charging them room and board, and I say charging them lightly, you're just moving money out of their account into your account, virtually, or writing a check, whatever's easier for you. But at the end of the day, it's still $841 a month of extra cash flow now coming into the household. How do you invest that or leverage that in the most effective way for your child? So you could turn around and fund your Roth IRA with $841 a month, you and your spouse. You could overfund your 401k, pay down bad debt. Notice how I didn't say pay down your mortgage. Anybody that has a refi in the last 3 years, you do not have a bad debt. That's a great debt. Keep that for the rest of your life, hopefully for 30 years. Or what if you use it and you pay for your life insurance with it, or you pay for your long-term care insurance with it, or anything to really benefit your child when it's needed many years down the line. So that's one of the things that you need to be creative with, some of the things that you can do. Did you have another question, Lori?
Yeah, how much do you say that you're charging them for a room and board?
Most of the attorneys I work with, and I think Randy would say the same thing, somewhere like $500-600 a month of room and board. Now, if your child's getting Social Security off your work record and they're getting $1,200-1,400 a month, now you got to charge them more. And at that point, charge them for everything: their cell phone if they have it, to share their cable or the high-speed internet, anything and everything. So you can effectively you're just moving money out of an account that's bad for them, which is in their name, and putting it into an account that's good for them, that's not in their name, that won't jeopardize their benefit eligibility. That's why it's easier to do this earlier than scramble around and say, oh man, his grandfather was putting money away in an UGMA account for 18 years and there's 200 grand in there. It's like, where was I 18 years ago when grandpa started doing this? So we could have told him not to create this problem. It's a good problem, I guess, to have, but it could have been made a little bit more efficient. So I just put back in the chat, guys, that link to the evaluation form if you want to complete it and find a time via Zoom, continue these conversations and see if there's anything, how all this stuff from a high level might apply to your own situation. So thank you again. Anybody else have any questions? No. Well, guys, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it as always. I see something here in the chat. Oh, thank you. Yes, you're welcome, Karen. Thank you again. And again, share the information with others, and hopefully we'll continue this conversation soon.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.